379 days. It's about as long as it takes to do absolutely nothing. We haven't worked on this thing since the 25th of December, a year ago. So we need to work on it. But before we get into it, last time we did work on it, before we got back, rolled it off the ute, it sat here under the tarp. We cut the frame, we extended it 2 inches forward. We needed to give ourselves a bit of clearance here on the head because we put 10 inch by the 8 inch wide rims on it. So we've done that. We did some small work on the loom, which we needed to do to get it running back then after we cut and welded it, because we needed to test out what we did with the cutting and the welding to make sure that it was functional. And this thing actually rode under its steam for the very first time since we started modifying it. Since then, like I said, we haven't done anything on it, but some goodies have turned up. The brake carrier. This is parts out of Japan. G-Craft is the company. We have used some G-Craft gear on here before. I'm not sure whether we've gone over it, but we will. So this is our disc brake carrier. Billet aluminium, all machined, very good quality and stuff, and it's really important that we actually got this. We were lucky to find it because I'm pretty sure that this part here is discontinued. We found it brand new, second-hand out of Japan. It turned up a long time ago, but it's all good. We got it. The other bit is our intake tube. Cast aluminium. I think they are larger diameter bore in them as well for the intake. And the best part is they swivel, so we can mount that on any direction or any angle that we need to give us clearance, because the size of our carb is giving us a little problem. We need to clear the tank. We're not cutting the tank, we're not modifying it. That tank is staying as it is, and that is 100% original. The reason why we got the swivel tube is so that we can come out and under. We still have a bit of work to do there, but anyway, today we will be working on the loom. So I want to go through, I want to show you what we're using, how we're going to use it, why we're using it. So let's stop sitting around for any more days. Let's get into it. For this install, you will need a good electrical diagram for your bike and engine. This will help identify what color wires you will need. Heat shrink. It is important to note that we are using a marine type with the glue impregnated. A Deutsch connector kit. The kits are good as they come with the crimper specific for your wire gauge. A good set of wire strippers and flush cuts. Your power source, in our case a 6-volt battery with good charge. Braided sleeving. We are using 6mm, 8mm and 12mm, which come in 5 meter rolls. Felt tape and your various colours of wire. You will also need a good multimeter. In this case we're using Fluke. So the first thing we need to do is expose the wiring loom. So basically we've got to strip the bike. What we're going to remove our fairings and seat, our fuel tank. We need to remove the headlight itself as well. Anyone who hasn't worked on these types of bikes, or they're not all like this, but this is like our dash in the car. All the wires that sit behind there, hence why our speedo's up there. So we need to take out our headlight to get to all the wires behind here. Take the fuel tank off because our main harness runs down this main tube here, and then the fairings because they're going to get in the way. We are also going to remove our temporary fuel system because you don't want fuel and potential electrical sparks, because if you do, there's a good potential you might get a fire, and you don't want to be breathing in fumes, especially working in your garage, because it's not good. Some people might like it, but It's not good. But the first thing though you do need to do is have a clean work area. So make sure your work area is nice and tidy and put things up out of the way where they're not going to get kicked, dropped, lost. Lots of things do get lost. So just tidy that up. This is actually, this is a rear brake. It's off a Ducati Monster. I wanted to use this on the front, but I'm just not too sure. It's not so, we won't go into the brakes now, but the brakes is something that it's going to take a lot of time and a lot of homework. And you might be thinking, yeah, the rear brake is going to go on the rear, but we have 2 tyres here on the rear as opposed to a single one that was on the Ducati Monster. Yeah, most 99% of riders will hit the front brakes first, hence why you will generally have 1 or 2. But that's the sort of thought process behind using this on the front and the bigger on the rear, because you've got 2 tyres you need to slow down, but that's not for today. So just get that up out of the way. Like I said, yeah, so we're going to remove the fuel system, strip all that stuff off, so get some tools. I need my snips. We'll need a 10mm ring open-ended spanner. I also need my 4mm Allen key. So, bearings and seat. This stuff's all just been sitting on there because you're working on the bike most of the time. So pop them out the way. Fuel tank. Let's take this. Be gentle with this because it's in such good condition. Now I have a tendency, for a very good reason, mostly because it's my OCD, but putting the bolts back where they come from. Especially when you've gone, as I mentioned earlier, we have gone over every single nut and bolt on this motorbike and changed it because the original ones were shit. We changed them to the socket head cap screw because they're very easy to undo, and the reason why they go back in the same hole is because you don't want to lose them. When you go through and you have to replace every single nut and bolt on the bike, when you lose one, it becomes very annoying to have to find a replacement. So yeah, just put them back where they come from. Be careful with these too. Oh man, it's like a rat's nest in here with all these wires. I'll be so happy once all this loom is complete. Make sure this goes in a very safe spot where it's not going to get dropped or broken. Yep, so that's that. Take our carb off. Oh, you can smell the stale fuel left in the bowl. So that's a tip for anyone who does have carbureted bikes and things like that. If your bike is going to sit around for an extended period of time, try and drain the bowl, because what happens is if over time that fuel will evaporate. As it does, 1, 2, over time the fuel does evaporate within the bowl, and you get that waxy residue. And if anyone's ever seen it, it's like almost like an amber tarry type thing. And cleaning these, cleaning any carb that's been sitting numerous times where the bowls and the jets and everything are waxed up, it's a pain in the ass. So if you do store your bike or you don't ride your bike for a long time, just drain the bowl, because it's going to stop that. It might dry the seals out, but getting seals and things for them is a lot better than having to pull the whole thing apart, ultrasonically clean it, then rejet it, then put it all back together. So yeah. Anyway, this is our temporary fuel system that we've been using. It's only about 200, I'd say less than 200 mils, probably even less than that. And on a full fuel tank, this here, on this mock setup, you get about 40 minutes of riding, maybe even longer, which is not really good actually. And I guess that's the reason why, let's put him out of the way, that's the reason why these are, in my opinion, they're a good engine, because they're economical and they're reliable. They don't go fast, and you know, anyone that wants to go fast, go and buy a sports bike, but that's why we're going to stick with this engine, because it's just reliable, it's basic, it's economical. So now we've got all that out of the way, just put our tools away. Now we've exposed our loom, which we'll go over. The first thing that we need to do, actually, one more thing we need to do. We need to remove the ignition because the last time I worked on this, there we go. You remember how I said that we did some small, some minor parts of the loom? This was one of them. I haven't finished it off. So we need this because this is actually probably where we're going to start wiring, because that's going to tie into our harness. And without this, once we do start wiring, we can't check if our ignition is doing anything. And we don't want to get all this work done and get to the end and then find out that doesn't work. That's where we're going to use our multimeter. That's why we need to make sure that our battery was at full charge, because you're doing two things at once. We're not going to strip the loom off the bike for the reason is, yeah, you can do it like that, but we want to make sure that we're not making our loom too short, which is going to be too tight around bends and things like that when you turn your handlebars and things like that, and that we're routing the wires in the best possible way that we can that's going to suit the bike, because the loom effectively has to mold to our bike. So the loom's going to stay on. I'm just going to put this over here, put these needle nose pliers away, and now I will show you our loom. This is hard. I hear what you're thinking. Why do we need 3 electrical diagrams when we're working on one bike? That's simple. The engine, if you watch earlier episodes, we estimated that that is a potentially 1986 or a mid-1980s Cdi 110 motor. The bike itself, it's an ATC 70. The electrics and the dash and the loom, it's all from a Cdi 90. So we have 3 different bikes. That's why we need 3 electrical diagrams. In fact, that's how we identified that this engine here is potentially, it's a mid-80s motor. I tried to identify it from the actual VIN engine number. I couldn't really come up with anything definitive, and I thought that potentially maybe this engine code, because it's very unique, might have just been a batch run out of the Honda factory. In fact, it's actually not. The Cdi 90 Loom electrical diagram, is the one that we're going to be using the most, and the reason is because our loom's from a 90. But where we need to cross paths with our other electrical diagrams is because the 90 and the 110 weren't built together. So we're going to build it together, and this is how we're going to do it with our electrical diagrams. The third one we have here is from a 2002 to 2004, and it's from the New Zealand model. You say, well, why do we need such a late model diagram for the 110? Yours is 86. It's important to note that even that late on, the Cdi 110s, they were still producing 6-volt models. So if we could get the most recent 6-volt model electrical diagram, and then we can go back as far as we need to with our original 6-volt diagram, we can compare the differences between the two and find out where along the way did things get dropped off because you've got manufacturing technologies that come in, so they say you don't need a silicon rectifier anymore because you can replace that with a CDI module, an ignition module. And that's why we have the 3, because we need to find out where along the lines did things get dropped off and replaced, and where along the lines are we going to get this motor to talk to these electrics and to all talk in sync and harmony. So let's go through this, and I want to point out the differences between the models along the years. So our first electrical diagram is the Cdi 90, which is the loom that we're working on. The way that it's actually laid out, if you haven't seen these before, is these diagrams are actually quite nice because they're laid out sort of the way that they are on the bike. If we were to grab this and lay this over the bike, over that center tube, you'll find that all of these things actually kind of lay to where they are on the bike. This is the left side, that's the right side, that's the front, this is the back. This one here is very old school type of a motor. It's mainly more mechanical. It's got some technologies in it for the time that it was manufactured. So looking here, we've got our turn signal controls, we have our emergency shut off, front stop switch which was on the brakes, our dash, headlight, indicators, etc. If we go over to our Cdi 110, which is what we have here, you will find this is actually what we're looking at. We've got a silicon rectifier, which we have here. We have the CDI, which is here. The neutral switch, which is here. The AC generator, which sits in here. The battery, etc, etc. Now we can tell as well, this is definitely from 82. This is definitely from our bike because we have here our Cdi unit. Now all these wires that come out of here, you will find there's 7 wires there. On our Cdi unit, we have 6 wires going into it and 1 that is no longer attached to it. So we can chase that and see where along the lines, what did we drop off. When we take our 2000, 2002, these are very similar. not much has changed. They have an addition of the buzzer for the indicators, which many people would have heard them on motorbikes as well. They put a resistor in here, and they've also put the regulator here, which is a modern day version of the silicon rectifier and things like that. Ignition control module, which is the same as the here, CDI type thing. But yeah, they're very similar, one to 20 years apart, and then from there to there, 15 years again.